So here we go. We're after World War II. Um, After World War II, we have a decolonization movement that's going to take place. A lot of people thought this was going to take place after World War One, but with the Treaty of Versailles and the Allied powers basically keeping all of their colonial rule and expanding even a little bit, that's going to change. And then now it's going to happen after World War II. So they were inspired mainly by those movements after the First World War, like I said, but now they actually do take hold, and 120 countries are going to be created between World War II and 2014. So that's a majority of the world countries actually are started at that point. This one is we're going to look at Asia, we're going to look at India, we're going to look at Vietnam, and we're going to go to the Middle East and China and how China changes. Although China doesn't get independence, it already had independence. So here we go. Let's look at India first. Here is Southeast Asia, and here's India. Well, first of all, in 1937, remember, they've been granted some reforms, such as some self-rule, but that's going to go away. Or, I'm sorry, that's going to stay, but there's just never trust. There's especially never trust between Gandhi, who remember was the leader of the Indian National Congress, and Churchill, who was the leader of the UK. To the point that Churchill said that India would never get self-rule. And so when Churchill orders India to support the war effort, they're not very happy about that. And when Churchill is voted out of office after the war, the Labour Party comes to rule in the UK, and they want to dismantle the empire because of it being such a financial burden on the UK. So at the same time here, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who's seen as the father of Pakistan, the head of the Muslim League, calls for just a day of just demonstrations throughout all of India, the Day of Direct Action. And it's basically trying to say, hey, we're here too as Muslims, and we don't want to be just oppressed still. That they believe that if the Hindus take over and create India and it's together as one state, that you're going to have a problem because now we're just going to be oppressed by the Hindus instead of the British. So that Day of Direct Action led to fights and rioting. About 6,000 people die. And this just proves Ali Jinnah to say, hey, we want an independent, free state of Pakistan. And now, but that's very different with what Nehru and Gandhi want. Nehru and Gandhi are the leaders of the Indian National Congress, and they want a unified India. Britain wants out, remember. Gandhi, the leader of the Indian National Congress, wants to stay together. Pakistan wants its own state. And then Britain basically just says, enough. We are getting out. And they say, we are going to leave on August 15th, 1947, what will be known as the Partition of India, and we are going to create two states. Any state that is a Hindu majority will be India. Any state that is a Muslim majority will be Pakistan. And Gandhi's prediction is going to come true. Gandhi's prediction is that there are going to be rivers of blood. Because here's what happened. If you look here, if I get my map, here we go. If you look here in the northwest part of everything here in the color is India at this time, and then will be partitioned. It creates two states, which will eventually become three states. But at the time, you see Pakistan and Bangladesh will be East Pakistan and India. So you have Pakistan and India. But remember, it's who had 50% of the population. Now, first of all, this doesn't recognize the Sikhs. And what this creates is 10 million refugees that are moving back and forth trying to get on the right side of that border. 500 million people die. And then there's even the question of what to do with Kashmir up here in the north. This isn't good. It's incredibly bloody. It's violent. People are moving, and it's just not good. You can see down here in the bottom left a picture of people moving on cars. It's not good. So you have two new countries created. You have India, and you have Pakistan. The rest of this lecture is going to focus on Pakistan. India, Nehru, he becomes the first leader, and he wants to stay out. He promotes what is called the non-alignment movement of the Cold War. He wants, basically, we don't want to get involved with either side. At the Bandung Conference in 1955 in Indonesia, 23 Asian countries and 6 African countries get together and they start to figure out, can we make this a full-fledged movement? We don't want to deal with colonialism. We don't want to deal with racism. We want to stay out of it. They try, but it doesn't work. It doesn't really work. India's going to take money from both the Communist Party in the Soviet Union and from the U.S. and Pakistan. And here's a precursor to today's world. Pakistan is going to take money from the U.S. Now, after the partition of India and the non-alignment movement that goes through India, they see Nehru as their first prime minister. India is their first prime minister. They're going to stick together, even though they have ethnic, religious, diverse, a ton of ethnic and religious diversity, conflict, poverty, and overpopulation. We're going to talk just briefly about some of the modern day things here. Yeah, Indira Gandhi becomes prime minister. She is the daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru, no relation to Mahatma Gandhi. She leads from 1980 to 1984, and one of the things she oversees is the Green Revolution. The Green Revolution is basically a huge farming movement where farmers are going to, instead of being subsistence agriculture, they are going to move to commercial agriculture, and it's going to feed people. You do start to see a split between wealthy farmers and poor farmers, and it kind of creates India becomes way more self-sufficient with food than they ever were before. And part of the reason they put they wanted the Green Revolution to happen was they were desperately dealing with overpopulation measures. And one of the things she does is she puts in repressive birth control policies. They put in birth control camps, basically, that were worked in some forced sterilization. There, that's the word I'm looking for. So the Green Revolution helped to help them grow more food. Green Revolution, basically, you could grow wheat multiple times a year with some seeds and some irrigation methods, and that helped to deal with some of the overpopulation problems. The other part of this to just look at is a large minority population is the Sikhs in the Punjab region. Gandhi's son, Indira Gandhi's son, gets killed there at the Golden Temple by a terrorist in 1991, and then basically the government goes in and creates atrocities in that same temple, and then the Sikhs. And it just goes back and forth. The Sikhs would love to get more autonomy in the Punjab region because it is such a large minority. There's a large Sikh population here in Edina as well. And so trying to figure out an answer to that one's been hard. So those are just some of the issues moving on with India today. And you could talk for a long time about India because it is the most diverse place on the planet. And they have so many issues today as well. All right, next, let's move to Vietnam. Vietnam is going to be very different than India in that they can't stay out of the Cold War. They're going to take out Japan, who had taken them over during World War II, and they're going to put forward a Declaration of Independence are very similar to what the U.S. had. France wanted its colonial power back, so they take over Saigon and southern Vietnam. Northern Vietnam will be communist, led by a guy by the name of Ho Chi Minh, who is going to believe in guerrilla warfare and things like that. And France comes in and they bomb parts of northern Vietnam, and France takes control over the whole thing by 1947. This is going to lead to guerrilla warfare, led by Ho Chi Minh and General Vo Nguyen Gai. And they're going to start this guerrilla warfare, and basically it's a communist setting for him that it's going to, and this anti-imperialist nature grows. And France eventually, they just can't hold on. They can hold on against the Vietnamese, and in 1954, the French are gone. However, Vietnam at the Geneva Conference is going to be divided into two. Northern Vietnam will be communist. Southern Vietnam will be non-communist. And Eisenhower sees this as a potential domino theory. And so he backs Diem as the unpopular leader, and basically Eisenhower gets the elections delayed so Diem can win the election, as opposed to Ho Chi Minh, who he thought would come down and win the election in the South. So Eisenhower comes in and will back that. Now, the communists are going to attack South Vietnam. So here's kind of the second stage of the Vietnam War, is the fact that you will have, let me move myself over here so you can get the bottom of this. You will have now the U.S. fight here, and it's a very unpopular war in the U.S. The U.S. gets involved after the communists attack South Vietnam. The The North attacks the South. The U.S. gets involved to help the South because they didn't want to fall victim to the domino theory. And the stalemate that ensues is just fine. The U.S. is used to big open battles. Well, here, the guerrilla warfare that takes place, it's perfect for the Vietnamese. And so they just wear the U.S. out over time. Nixon even increases, Richard Nixon, the President of the United States, increases the amount of the war. Eventually he'll even go into Cambodia, and then eventually he'll turn it over to the South Vietnamese and leaves in 1973. And it doesn't really work very well. Doesn't work. Then they have another Paris Peace Accords in 1973, which sends the U.S. home. However, South Vietnam is defeated in 1975, and the country is completely unified under communism in 1976. So two definite parts to this war. You have the first part with the nationalist struggles against the French, and then you have the nationalist struggles against the U.S. But as a whole, you have a new communist country with Vietnam backed by the USSR and China.